What's going on, my creative collective? Welcome to lesson number 14. Is it a day late? Yeah, but it's fine. I had a super busy day yesterday and I was needing to honor my body's need for rest and pace. So we're still on track. We're still doing this. It's okay. We got to let a little bit of our humanness slip in sometimes, right? Like I said in other videos, spiritual beings having a human experience, and we can't deny that humanity. This is Divine Surfing Lessons for A Course in Creativity, and we are also on lesson 14 in the workbook for students, the lesson for which is God did not create a meaningless world. So I think about this in terms of spirit did not create a meaningless world. This is really a reorienting of our perspective towards the meaning that is inherent in things and that is independent of the things that the illusions that we project outward onto it. This is really about correcting our perspective, right? This is we're getting into the beginnings of how we see the miracle implanting itself in our context, in our hearts, and really starting to disrupt the patterns of thinking that we have. Section 3 of lesson 14 kind of outlines the basis of this. So what we're learning to do here is learning to let go of the thoughts that you have written on the world and see the Word of God in their place. Now, I think the Word of God has been overused and applies to so many different things related to Christian mythology, and what this relates to more so is spirit. What is it that core energy that we come from, right? The both and, right? Where does that energy come from, and what meaning do we see in the world when that is present? Because a lot of our ideas, we filter things through, we get these ideas of value that things have or don't have, and then we ascribe that onto the world and people and make judgments so quick, like we're just so quick to decide about things, people, situations, when realistically the meaning runs a lot deeper than that. But our initial reaction is the reaction to the illusions and fears that we have, that we've made ourselves, right? That we've created. This is such an important lesson related to creativity, because when I think about the ways that we develop ideas, the ways that we believe creation should look, when we emplace our work into existing threads of art or poetry or song, we seek to emplace them in something that already exists, right? That's where you get all of these different comparisons, and we get a sort of legitimizing of some over the others in terms of access to things like grants or funding or whatnot. So I think that this it really allows us to take a more grounded experience and expand it inwardly, so that we can then get a better view of the ways that the illusions that we create and participate in can really disconnect us. I found this lesson to be a bit tough at times, because it goes into things that seem like they're very much real, right? Like wars, illness, disasters. And what I had to do, so the course, lesson 14, calls it your personal repertory of horrors. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's a really good way to describe worry. This personal repertory of horrors, I have different ones, and we see them now, and I think to myself, how can these things not be real? Because they're out there. But what this is really getting to is the point that the spirit from which we come, that we seek to unite with over and over and over again, so spirit for me, it doesn't, those are not productions of that thing. Those are productions of us. That's what humans have created with our thought patterns, with fear. So we have a higher choice available to us, because this is the recognition that there's a whole different kind of meaning that can be seen in situations, not applied to situations, but seen in them. Because to apply it means that it comes from a thought process. If it's inherently there and we choose it, it means that we are choosing something that is existing from beyond us, if that makes sense. So it goes beyond ego. Marianne Williamson has talked about this in terms of there's like a reality taking place alongside the one that we experience in the everyday, when we're disconnected from our higher self, right? From our higher source of knowing. When we're super connected to ego, that reality comes through as this kind of one track, and then there's the other track. So it's this choice that we make, and we can vacillate between the two in a day, in a situation, regarding a topic. But it's important to remember that there's a different kind of meaning that we can look for. And when we see it, it pulls the veil back, and it opens up so much more of our own heart and a situation, because it gives us the perspective to see so much more than what's just happening in front of us, right? Which is crucial. Right along with everyone, I have my own things that become that make it difficult for me to pause and to see that bigger picture, right? For me, a lot of it is oriented towards collective. So a lot of it is oriented towards community. And I find it very hard to stay in balance and see the big picture when it comes to injustice directed towards equity-seeking groups or communities, because it doesn't make sense as to why harm is done. And, even if people try to logic it away or rationalize it, that to me is one of my, it's hard for me to pull back. Astrology nerds like myself out there, I have a stellium in Aquarius, so Sun, Moon, Mercury, and MC, and then I have a stellium in the 11th house from Mars, North Node, and Jupiter. So that community orientation is very, it's like embedded in my being. And when I learned about these things relative to astrology, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. That does, yeah. What I love about this course is that it offers a perspective that helps you see that the work is ongoing. We never get it done, right? I go back to this all the time because it's such a beautiful, it's so comforting. How comforting to know that you don't need to be perfect. How comforting. Right? How comforting. Because we say all the time, affirmations, I am enough, I am lovable, I am worthy. What does it look like in the everyday when we are in the quiet of our own minds and we have opportunities when we have opportunities to grow and we see ourselves instead of as works in progress and learning as failures, right? These are choices that we make individually that can then affect our approach to collective. These exercises can be a little bit discomforting. I am not even gonna try to pretend that they aren't, because the point is that we're so used to seeing in the world and thinking of the world as exclusively what we think of it, as opposed to the multitudes of definitions and understandings and concepts that can be applied to it. And objectivity is not to remove you from a context. Objectivity is to entertain the possibility that there's something more going on in a situation than what we might be encountering. Now, when we get into situations where there's harm being done, there's questions of who should consider that big picture, right? Because there's accountability and also protecting ourselves from legitimate harms. So the way I've looked at this before, and maybe it's of help too, just to clarify what I mean by objectivity. Martin Luther King Jr. talks about, to take no side. I'm butchering the quote, but to take no side is to take a side, right? To remain neutral in the face of oppression is participating in it. So when we think about it in this context, objectivity is not about taking ourselves out of a context. It's not about saying, well, let me give the person doing harm the benefit of the doubt, right? No, it's not about that necessarily. This is about seeing the different perspectives available to you, even in the midst of that experience, that do not place that the person's harmful view or harmful actions at the forefront of your mind. It opens up a different possibility for you that allows you to reclaim your power. That's what I love about this Course in Miracles. And relative to creativity, this is so important, because when we do these exercises and go through these steps, we're actually liberating the space within us to create from a place that believes in possibility, that believes something is possible, that believes that we have the ability, right? So it's really like a grounded possibility. It's a grounded possibility. This lesson also talks about how there's nothing inherently wrong with the world. It comes down to the meaning that we've made of it, and almost this game of meaning, that by participating in my meaning, that means that you mean something to me, special relationships, right? A Course in Miracles. And by my participating in your meaning, I mean something special to you, and that's how we define specialness, and that's how we define a relationship. When realistically, when one of those pieces falls apart or it becomes dislodged in along the way, because it is an illusion, then what ends up happening is we find and feel like betrayed. We feel betrayed by situations and people because the meaning that we thought they had or shared is absent, right? So this is really, to me, this is really important to bring to relationships, to bring to any kind of coming together, because there's a way that we can come together in mutual understanding of what things we want and expect and hope for and all of that. There's also this broader understanding that sometimes the dynamics of the ego can pull us into a situation where shared meaning becomes the only thing that forms the basis of a relationship or connection with people. This can be romantic, this can be friendships, anything, right? So it can be very ego-based because it's formed on the basis of how much we adhere to somebody else's illusion, as opposed to seeing someone for who they really are. I'm going out of focus here because it's focusing on the microphone. That's funny. This is really about understanding and surfing the ways that the ego just pulls these waves up and and understanding how to surf them from a place of higher perspective, from a pulling back, and being able to see them very clearly and directly for what they are. And understanding too that, even the best surfers sometimes get pulled under by waves, but they swim through it, right? They swim through it. As an activity, so I'm beginning to incorporate some creative sparks slowly, because I wanted to spend the first few lessons really focused on the mindset and getting this perspective sort of shifted and tweaked a little bit. But this, the next few I'm going to be incorporating creative sparks. So the creative spark for today is, if you had no concepts to define or explain how you feel and what is happening around you, what would that look like in art? How would you articulate that outside of language and outside of the ways that ego uses discourse to sort of separate us from one another? What would that feel like? How would you paint it? Even if you wrote it, what are the different ways to describe the situation? Not just perspectives, but if you had no concepts and you didn't know what that was and what it was for, that feeling. This isn't to dissociate from feelings, but to open up a possibility that they mean something more than what we've been primarily associating with them. Just as an exercise, I find sketching and watercolors to be excellent mediums, as with writing. I mean, as a poet, that's my jam, photo poetry and photography. But this is really just a call to look at that perspective, the perspective shift, and moving in towards the miracle as opposed to away and into fear. So that is lesson 14, my friends, Divine Surfing Lessons. Thank you so much for watching this morning. If this resonated at all, please like and subscribe. I love having you on my channel, and I also really appreciate your eyes and your time wherever this finds you on the time-space continuum, morning, afternoon, or night. I hope that it finds you so very well, my friends. Take care.